I stepped outside in my flannel pajama pants and bare feet, blinking at the dust cloud rising from the base of the ridge. Down below, just beyond my property line, was an excavator, idling like a dragon, and 3 HOA board members in folding chairs, sipping iced tea like it was the 4th of July parade. And where my dam had stood, gone, obliterated, all that remained was a gouged stretch of earth and the twisted skeleton of the sluice gate, stabbed upright in the mud like a tombstone. Karen Dorsey, the newly elected president of the Willow Crest HOA, stood front and center, a wide brim hat on her head, and a laminated clipboard clutched like a weapon. And then there was that sash. Red letters on white fabric. Water belongs to Willow Crest. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I just stared, my coffee cooling in my hand, and said to myself, so this is how it starts. See. 3 years ago I built that dam with my own 2 hands. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't flashy. But it worked. A reinforced earthworks system with French drains, culverts, and a gravel catch basin, engineered to slow seasonal runoff and redirect it safely into the town's retention system. Before I built it, Willow Crest flooded nearly every monsoon season. I know because I used to watch it from this exact porch, mulch pouring down the street, trash bins doing somersaults, and homeowners cursing the clay-heavy soil their dream homes were planted on. So I decided to fix it. Not because anyone asked me to. Not because I wanted to prove anything. But because my late brother, who'd once been an engineer with the Army Corps, left me a set of blueprints and a simple message before he passed: gravity always wins, unless you learn to guide it. And I did. Quietly. Without asking anyone's permission. For 2 years, the dam did its job without incident. Willow Crest stayed dry. Yards stayed intact. Not one thank you. No one even noticed. Until Karen moved in. She came knocking one afternoon in March. Uninvited. Standing by the edge of my fence line in spotless white jeans and sandals better suited for a boutique opening than desert soil. I'm here about the structure, she said, waving vaguely at the trees beyond which the dam lay. What structure? I asked. Though I already knew. It's not in harmony with the visual cohesion of the Willow Crest aesthetic, she said flatly. I replied calmly, I'm not in Willow Crest. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Well, it still affects the shared watershed. I handed her a folder, copies of permits approved by Yavapai County, the State Water Board, and the Department of Environmental Quality. She didn't even flip through them. You know, when people build things that don't make sense, it usually means they're hiding something. That word, suspicious, it hung in the air like a scent. Over the next month, things got strange. I got 17 violation notices from the HOA. 17. Everything from unauthorized manipulation of natural features to visual disruption to one that literally said hydrological confusion. I framed that one. Then came the flyers. Little red and white bulletins tucked into every mailbox in Willow Crest warning of the private reservoir on unmonitored land. They made it sound like I was hoarding storm water to build a moat around my cabin. I didn't react. Not publicly. But I knew what was coming. So I installed trail cams. Locked the gate on the access trail. Welded the chain shut myself. Then I left town for a weekend. My niece was getting married in Flagstaff, and I wasn't about to miss it. I checked everything before I left: the culverts, the overflow pipe, the levee edge. I even posted a sign at the trailhead: private property. Do not enter. Structure permitted and monitored. I was gone for 48 hours. And when I came back, the dam was gone. The moment I turned off the highway onto my dirt drive, I felt it. You could call it instinct. Or maybe just the way the wind shifted. The kind of silence that creeps up your spine, not peaceful. Just wrong. My boots hit the gravel path leading to the ridge, and each step made my stomach sink. There was no bird song, no hum of insects, just a tightness in the air and the faint smell of ozone. And when I crested the hill, I saw it, my worst suspicion confirmed. The dam was gone, not damaged, not partially dismantled. Gone. The whole retention system had been bulldozed into memory. No retaining wall. No spillway. No sluice gate, except for a single piece of twisted steel jammed into the mud like a crucifix. I stood there for a long time. Long enough to hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Long enough to realize I was shaking. Then I saw the tracks, deep, wide, unmistakably fresh. Heavy construction vehicle treads had cut straight through my access trail. Right over the signs and the locked gate. They didn't even try to hide it. A laminated sign, staked into the earth, flapped in the breeze. It read, "Removal of unauthorized structure under Section 7.4 of the Willow Crest Covenant bylaws." No signature. No date. Just the HOA logo in the corner and a checklist of board-approved actions. I could feel my face burning. I made for the closest trail cam. Gone. Not stolen, ripped off the tree. Wires hanging like snapped tendons. The second cam was the same. The third? Smashed by a rock. But the memory card, miraculously, was still intact. I sprinted back to the shed and dug into the dam's control box. There they were. 2 redundant micro recorders, still intact. I popped one into my laptop and let it roll. The footage was clear. 2 men in safety vests, no logos. No helmets, cutting through the chain on my gate with bolt cutters. A bobcat rumbled in moments later, knocking over the retaining wall like it was made of toy bricks. And there she was, Karen Dorsey, standing in a pair of white sneakers, barking orders like some twisted HOA general. "Clear it all," she said, sipping from a plastic cup. "This whole setup's an eyesore. If he wanted to build a lake, he should have asked permission. Permission for my land, my permits, my labor." I watched the video again. And again. And I didn't feel anger anymore, I felt cold. I uploaded every file to a flash drive. Backed it up to the cloud. Printed my entire permit packet, county approvals, engineering reports, hydrology notes, topographic overlays, and drove straight to the Yavapai County office. It was closed. Of course it was Sunday. So I went home, sat at my kitchen table, and did what I was trained to do. Document everything. Damage report. Erosion risks. Predicted rainfall. I contacted my water engineer. Scheduled a full site survey for Monday. And started calculating worst-case scenarios. The preliminary estimate for structural loss, $42,000. And that didn't even touch the environmental impact or the liability if a flood hit Willow Crest. Because here's what Karen didn't understand, what most HOA boards never understand. That dam wasn't just some hobby project. It was a safety mechanism. It held back roughly 170,000 gallons of seasonal runoff that, without a buffer, would now shoot straight downhill into a subdivision built on unstable clay, with French drains from the Reagan administration and not a single retaining wall. And monsoon season? 2 weeks away. By the 3rd day of rain, my boots made a wet squelch with every step out to the ridge. What used to be a trail was now oatmeal. My gravel path was drowning. The ground had given up pretending to be solid. I stood there in my rain slicker every morning like a sentinel, watching runoff carve its own path through the landscape. And it was cutting hard. I'd installed a few temporary barriers, some old BMS panels, gravel berms, but they weren't meant to hold this volume. Without the dam, every drop of water was now a missile aimed straight at Willow Crest. They didn't know it yet. Or maybe they did, and didn't want to admit it. Either way, no one from the HOA had spoken to me. No calls. No letters. Not even a smug email. Just silence. That's how I knew they were nervous. On the 4th night, it hit 2:37 a.m. A deep, wet crack echoed across the ridge like a bone snapping under pressure. I sat bolt upright in bed, heart hammering. By the time I grabbed my flashlight and made it out the front door, the sound had grown, a low, monstrous roar rising from below. It was the sound of the earth moving. I ran, slipped twice in the mud but kept going. Flashlight beam bouncing wildly. And then I saw it. Not a trickle. Not a creek. Not runoff. A wall of brown water. 10 feet across. Charging down the slope like a freight train of sludge and debris. It slammed into the upper boundary of Willow Crest like it was trying to erase it from the map. I stopped at the overlook, gasping. The faux stone retaining wall behind Karen's cul-de-sac? Gone. Sheared clean off. A 30-foot slab of concrete now lay in shards at the base of the hill. Her backyard, once meticulously landscaped, had transformed into a pit of brown foam. I spotted her white patio chairs bobbing like forgotten pool toys in a muddy whirlpool. And below that, chaos. Water poured down the main road like a river, dragging mulch, trash bins, someone's basketball hoop. I swear I saw a garden gnome launched like a torpedo into a neighbor's front window. It would have been funny if it wasn't so biblical. I turned back for my camera. This wasn't hearsay. This was evidence. I filmed everything. The breach, the cascade, the street-turned river, sidewalks cracking open like bad welds, drain grates exploding with geysers of angry water. I caught a for sale sign floating past like it was trying to escape town. By sunrise, the clouds started to break, but the neighborhood looked like a war zone. Emergency crews were already arriving, firefighters wading through knee-deep water, knocking on doors. Karen stood in her front yard, pink robe soaked, screaming into her phone while 2 responders inflated a rescue raft in her koi pond. Her mailbox was missing. Her lawn was soup, and her eyes locked on mine across the floodplain with a look I'll never forget, pure, white-knuckled panic. The kind that only comes when someone finally understands they've lost control. I didn't wave this time. Didn't need to. She knew. The community center had never been that full. Not for potlucks. Not for election night. Not even when someone claimed to see a bobcat in the dog park. This was different. The room was a sea of lawn chairs, soggy tennis shoes, and crossed arms. The mood? Boiling. Vince from Lot 12, usually a quiet guy, stood up first. "I want to know," he said, voice trembling, "why the board authorized earth-moving activity without a community vote." Silence. Karen stood at the front, flanked by the remaining 2 board members. Her clipboard shook slightly in her hands. She cleared her throat and launched into something about storm irregularities and a lack of transparency from external landowners. That was their play. "Blame me." Tom Granger, she said aloud, removed a water structure without HOA consultation. That led to increased downstream exposure. I raised my hand. "You mean the structure you tore out with a backhoe?" Gasps. A few phones lifted to start recording. Karen didn't look at me. That structure was never permitted properly. I stepped forward, holding up a folder. 3 permits. County stamped. Approved by Yavapai Water Control, Soil Conservation, and the Arizona Floodplain Board. "Want to see the signatures?" Someone in the crowd muttered. "Show it." Another said. "He warned us." I remember. I handed the packet to Vince. Karen tried to redirect. "That's not the issue at hand. The issue is the current damage." "Oh. We're talking about damage?" I said, voice rising. "Let's talk about footage of your contractor smashing private property. Of your voice on tape saying, 'Clear it all. It's an eyesore.'" Now the phones were definitely recording. That's when the county emergency manager walked in. Yellow boots, clipboard, soaked jacket. She cut through the crowd like a scalpel. "Mr. Granger?" she asked. "Right here." "You the registered owner of parcel 14B? "Yes." "You had a permitted stormwater retention structure?" "I did." She turned to Karen. "I've reviewed the footage. The removal was unauthorized. The runoff event triggered a floodplain reclassification. Insurance premiums for Willow Crest are going up by 17%. People started shouting. Karen turned pale. The official continued, "Furthermore, Willow Crest HOA submitted a complaint this morning, accusing Mr. Granger of dismantling the structure. Based on preliminary evidence, that appears inaccurate. That's when the real shift happened. The crowd wasn't just mad, they were betrayed. Karen. Martha from the end row said. Did you lie to us? She did. I answered. And now you're paying for it. I showed up to court in a clean flannel and my best boots. Sarah, my attorney and the same woman who helped me file every permit 3 years ago, showed up in a tailored suit and a grin that meant someone was about to get flattened. They're suing you? She'd said when I showed her the papers. This is a gift. The HOA's claim? Gross negligence, unauthorized terrain alteration, and destruction of a shared environmental resource. We countersued, unlawful demolition of a permitted structure, trespassing, property damage, and negligent contribution to flood loss. They had laminated screenshots from Google Earth. We had drone footage, permits, timestamps, contractor statements, and a little cherry on top, audio of Karen herself instructing unlicensed workers to bulldoze the dam. The court was packed. Half the neighborhood showed up. Vince was there. So was Martha. And the Martinez twins. Even the fire chief showed. Karen's attorney stood up first and tried to paint me as a rogue landowner with a hydrology complex. Sarah stood up second, and dropped a flash drive into the courtroom projector. First slide, the dam. Intact. Dated a week before demolition. Second, a video of the HOA contractor cutting the lock on the gate. Third, Karen. Sipping iced coffee. Saying. Clear it all. This place is an eyesore. The courtroom was silent. You could hear the bailiff blink. Then Sarah walked the jury through the permits. 3 signatures. County stamps. A thermal drone scan showing runoff retention. Finally, she passed around a printed copy of the HOA's own meeting minutes, the ones that said, "Take care of the dam issue while he's gone." The judge read that part out loud. Karen squirmed like she'd sat on a live wire. But the real knockout came during cross-examination. Did you have permission from the landowner to demolish the dam? Sarah asked the contractor. No. Mom. Did you have documentation from the county? No. What were you told? That it was just decorative. That he'd thank us later. The jury didn't look confused. They looked furious. The judge's ruling came down 2 weeks later. The HOA's lawsuit? Dismissed, no merit. Malicious in nature. Procedurally defective. Our countersuit? Approved. They were found liable on 4 counts. Unlawful demolition. Environmental violation. Trespassing. Negligent flood contribution. Total damages awarded, $1.87 million. An additional $620,000 for remediation. $130,000 in legal fees. And $50,000 in punitive damages, for good measure. I walked out of that courtroom with a check bigger than what I'd spent building the dam. But that wasn't the victory. Karen's house sold at a loss. Bright orange sign. Motivated seller. As is. You could almost hear it scream. She moved out of state, rumor is Tulsa. Maybe Nebraska. Last I heard. She was moderating a Facebook group called HOA Free Living and arguing with a man about fence heights. The rest of the board resigned one by one. Turns out they'd been running the HOA like a private fiefdom, kickbacks on landscaping contracts. Missing dues. A flood-resistant mulch campaign that turned out to be a scam from Karen's nephew. The county declared the organization functionally compromised. The charter was dissolved. The bylaws invalidated. What that meant was beautiful. No more pink clipboards. No more laminated threats about mailbox colors or decorative aggression. No more HOA fines for wind chimes or bird feeders. The last letter I got from them was a formal withdrawal of complaint. I framed it, and then I rebuilt. Not alone. Martha showed up first with a tray of lemon bars and a trowel. Then Vince brought his kids and 2 bags of gravel. The Martinez twins, whose basement had become a biology experiment, carried in rebar like it was penance. We didn't talk about the trial, not directly, but we moved like people who'd been through something together. Quiet hands. Focused faces. The kind of silence that doesn't need to explain itself. Stone by stone. The dam rose again, this time with more drainage. Better slope grading. strong the footings. And when it was done, I planted a flag right above the new spillway, not the American flag. That one had always flown out front. No. This was smaller. A weatherproofed plaque, bolted into a cedar post. Next time, ask the guy who understands gravity. Below it, I added the specs, drainage rate, capacity, permit ID. No ego, just fact. And the next time a storm rolled in, nobody panicked. The water slowed, pooled, released, just as it was designed. Kids played in the creek again. Dogs barked at frogs. The sound of water, once feared, became music. Neighbors wave now. Even the ones who used to avoid me at the feed store nod when they pass. One left a note on my gate: "You were right. We're sorry." No name. Didn't need one. The land healed. So did we.